Monopoly. A household game that almost everyone has played and loved. But have you ever felt the feeling of losing a game? It's pretty horrid, isn't it? Well, I'm here to make sure that you never have to experience that feeling by giving you my best tips for winning the game of Monopoly. Hello, it's CTO of the Theory Channel, and I am back from Pixarland to discuss this classic family game night board game. But although this game looks friendly on the outside, it creates more altercations than one might think. No, seriously, more than half of all Monopoly games end in an argument. But I'm not here to make sure those feuds do not happen, I'm merely here to make sure that you're on the winning side of them. Monopoly is a game of both luck and skill, but primarily luck because of the main vehicle of the game, the dice. This means that a game between two players of fairly the same skill level will usually be decided by chance. So what I'm going to do is not only increase your skill level with tips on the actual playing of the game, but also give you some tips on the luck of the game that in the end could be the difference between winning and losing a game. Tip 1 is to know the statistics. This might be the most important tip on this list, and for good reason. First of all, as I stated before, the main vehicle of the game is the dice, which means that it's going to help very much to know basic 2-die probability. You have the highest chance of rolling a 7 at 17%, then a 6 and 8 at 14%, and so on until you hit the least probable, which is 2 and 12 at 3%. Keep this in mind when playing a game. If you have a Monopoly and are debating whether or not to build property, choose to build if your opponent is 6, 7, or 8 spaces behind you, but maybe wait if they're 3 or 4. Moving on from dice, it's also crucial to know the statistics of the game board. The most landed on property chain is the orange Monopoly, and more on that later, while the least landed on is the purple. The single most landed on space is jail, followed by Illinois Avenue, and then the B&O Railroad. Again, keep this in mind when buying property and moving around the game board. Knowing these statistics can help you tremendously with decision making during a game. Okay, tip number 2 is property over money, especially at the beginning of the game. Although it might be tempting to save some of your money for a property you really want to buy, don't do it. You're much better off buying almost anything that you land on right away, trying to form a couple monopolies, and establishing yourself as a real landlord. You don't win a game of Monopoly by playing conservatively. Tip 3 is to eat, color, and most importantly, buy the oranges. As I said earlier, this property chain is the most landed on, and this is because it's sort of like a direct feed coming from jail. And since jail is the most landed on single space, it thereby causes the orange properties to be the busiest. So, if you can, do not hesitate to buy these properties and create this fantastic monopoly. Although the rent with hotels is just $950 compared to Boardwalk's $2,000, many 950s add up fast. And if your opponent is running out of money, it doesn't really matter. Tip number 4 is to bargain wisely. Trading and bargaining is a big part of the game in the later stages, and if you are taken advantage of in them, it could be a path to ultimate downfall. Sorry, didn't mean to sound so gloomy there, but anyway, I would take one of the usual rules of thumb for any sort of bargaining here. Don't accept the first offer no matter what. I mean, almost all of the time. #Boardwalk for Mediterranean Avenue. But seriously, do not let your opponent think that you want money or a property badly. Listen to their offer, revoke with an offer much more suited to your liking, and then try to meet somewhere in the middle. And take note of which properties your opponent seems to be drawn to during the game as well. Tip 5 is pretty simple. Follow the 3 houses rule. This rule explains that you will generate the most profit when building 3 houses immediately on your monopoly, instead of waiting to build for when you have more money or building 1 house at a time. I like this rule and encourage you to follow it as well. Okay, tip number 6 is to develop long-term strategies. Make up your mind on an ideal number of monopolies you want. Come up with a strategy for railroads and utilities. No matter what you do, just make sure that you have a plan in mind for the long term. Don't just automatically roll the dice every time it's your turn. Look at your opponent's property and money, and look at yours, and evaluate how you're doing in the game. Tip 7 is to play to your own advantage, which sounds kind of obvious, but what I really mean by this is to play a little dirty if you have to. If you're playing with more than 2 people, and you know that one of them is a stronger player than you, form an alliance with the other one and gang up on the stronger player. Just make sure that every decision you make in the game is for your own good. And finally, tip 8 is to simply follow the rules. And no, I don't mean no stealing from the bank. What I mean is to play by the real Monopoly rules and not follow any family made-up ones, like putting money on free parking or collecting 400 when landing directly on Go. The actual Monopoly rules were carefully crafted to give you the most control over your game, and messing with them will just add more luck to the game, which, if you follow tips 1 through 7, you really don't want. So, maybe I'm taking Monopoly a bit too seriously, but I really think that these tips will help you the next time you play. They might take a bit of practice, but in the end, they should help you get on the winning side of those arguments at the end of the day. So this is CTO of the Theory Channel saying goodbye for now.